Welcome to the official podcast of FOR ETERNIA.com. We have the power. I'm your host, AJ, and today's episode is titled, A Sword May Be Forged in the Fire, but it is tempered by wisdom. A commonly spoken proverb from a, I think, unknown origin that perhaps best encapsulates our guest today. Because not only is our guest an actor famous to so many fans as the evil master of swords, Blade, from the 1987 classic film Masters of the Universe, but he has been a voice artist, a fight director, a sword master, a whip master, an action coordinator, a weapons expert and teacher for over half a century now. Wow. He is truly a living legend, and we are honored to have him on. A big welcome goes out to Anthony De Longis. Anthony, sir, thanks for coming on.
It's good to be here.
And sir, I mean, how exciting is this? I mean, still like over 50 years and you're still going strong. I mean, that is like so impressive. Congratulations.
Well,
you're laughing. Why are you laughing?
It's fortunately I don't pay too much attention to it. Because if I did, then, I'd have to do math and I'd have to keep track. Although I do these days start going, well, those are my theater decades and that's my film and television, in this genre, or, and things start to come now in decades as opposed to, just a couple of years ago. But again, I'm kind of too busy moving forward to spend too much time in the past, other than to remember the things that I learned from, my various adventures and opportunities and what they taught me and how they inspire me to continue to, I'm always working on my skills. I'm always trying to refine the things I know and to add to my skill set because, as I tell my students, I have a dojo. I have a school here at Rancho Andala, which is where I live, and people come from all over the country, all over the world to train with me, actually. And I tell them, you want to arm yourself with knowledge because knowledge is choices and your art is in the choices that you make. And you need to be aware of the fact that there are choices and each choice has a consequence. So if you're going to be an artist and you want to be an effective artist, you need to pay attention to the story that you're telling. One of my favorite things happens to be action, because action is a visceral tool. You can get very heady and very intellectual. I refer to action as physical dialogue.
You're talking about physical acting. My mind also went to Charlie Chaplin. I know it's not action. Well, maybe.
Of course it is. Well, here's the other thing. You have verbal dialogue and you have physical dialogue. And, the care that you take when you learn words and learn what they mean, especially like with Shakespeare, a lot of that is an arcane, that's the word I'm looking for. It's not the way we say things anymore. And you have to understand thoroughly what it is, what the content of this text is, and then you kind of have to ignore it, because if you treat it like it's a holy relic, that's not good. That's not what Shakespeare was doing at the time. He was about communication and ideas. And so I always found that the flow of the ideas was what was important. I had the great privilege to play Iago twice. I also played Duke Vincenzo in Measure for Measure, which are two of the longest parts in the English language. So that was good for me too. But just basically, I tell people, if with action, if it's not driving story and revealing character, it's an opportunity missed. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate the power of action. As I started to say, when you're just listening to words, done well, and if you're willing to reveal something about yourself that you don't have to, I won't use that example. You don't have to be exactly who that character is, but there is a humanity to that character. And the best way to touch on that humanity is to be willing to share some of your own. And that's how you manage to reach an audience, saying words. When you can incorporate a physicality, it gives you a presence. It also, action is visceral. Action takes you out of your head, and when it's well done, you can't help but respond. So when you can meld these two things together, it's a very powerful storytelling tool. And this is what I have spent the last 5 decades trying to get better at. I initially started with no physical skills at all.
Right.
And then I started, my first martial art was fencing. And my fencing master was Ralph Faulkner, who was a 2-time Olympian. And
Wow.
he was Sword Master of the Stars back in the day. He did the golden age of Hollywood, really. He did the original Prisoner of Zenda. And of course, everybody knows his Court Jester and many, many other things besides. He was my first great teacher. And then I went on to Taekwondo and worked to a red belt level, but felt like, okay, I'm probably as good as I'm ever going to be in this art. This isn't the best art for me. And I heard about Guruden Inosanto, and then I trained with him for over a dozen years, who was the keeper of the flame for Bruce Lee and an extraordinarily gifted and generous teacher. He was my second inspiration. The two of them helped me create my unique system of bullwhip artistry, which we can circle back for. I am currently now about 14 years into Shinkendo, which is Japanese sword. Kaiso Toshishiro Obata, he created this system. He trained with the 3 surviving samurai schools, teachers from World War II, and got Menkyo Kaiden from all of them, which basically meant you may teach our system, you can't change our system, but we have nothing more to teach you. And he likes to say he escaped to the United States, where he could then create a system that he thought addressed all the elements. Some of what he had learned, he thought, oh, they're wonderful here, but they're kind of a little weak over here, etc. So he, has been creating his system since the early 80s, and I've been now training with him and my sensei, Matthew Lynch, for about 14 years. It feels full circle because one of my initial inspirations was Akira Kurosawa, Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, watching how they treated action in particular. It was always character driven. There was a passion and a commitment to. I used to go to the La Brea Theater, which is back in the 70s and 80s. The Toho La Brea, where they played all the samurai movies, and then there was also the Kokusai, which played all the kung fu movies, which was very Crouching Tiger, the same techniques, not as well executed. I had the pleasure of working with Yen Wu Ping, but that's another story. But many of the same ideas, except you can see the wires. You see them running across water. You see them backflipping upwards, which isn't really possible. I shall backflip onto this wall. You shall front flip off of that wall, and then we'll run the film backwards. But
Right.
Much of that required a willing suspension of disbelief, whereas the Japanese movies seemed a little bit more real action in real time, and it was. I found myself quite fascinated. I thought it had the same intensity as the Shakespeare that I was doing. So that was my first inspiration, and that was the bar that I set myself that I have.
But did that get you into the love of weapons and weapons training? So the movies actually pulled you into the. Wow. Okay.
Which is why I feel like when I do action in movies, I have a bar that is set very high, and that's what I aspire to.
Because that's an interesting angle, and you said something very interesting once, or maybe you said it more than once, but I try to wrap my brain around it. That you said you were an expert at not hitting people, and I was wondering, I was thinking about this, how someone goes through all this training, all this fighting training and all these different fight styles and stuff like that. And I was thinking, does that actually go against the grain of becoming a true, sword master or a true expert at Kung Fu, where you're actually training yourself to be an expert, not at hitting people, but avoiding people? Well, even avoiding people, but near missing people. right? It's a whole different like discipline. It feels like it goes against
No,
normal training.
at least
No,
how I view it. It's parallel knowledge, and each one. My theatrical work has made my martial studies better. My martial studies are the foundation for my theatrical work. It's why I train. It's why I never stop training. It's why I never stop refining
okay.
what I'm doing. There are things now I can't do that I used to be able to do. And alas, it's the years and the mileage, and but a couple replacement parts that are doing very well. But rather than lamenting what I can't do, I work to refine and improve the things I can. My knowledge, my touch, my perspective, my refinement, my the delicacy, my sensitivity to the energy of a partner is greater than it's ever been. And which brings us to my mantra, which is
Yes.
if I'm not getting better, I'm just getting older. And there's only one of those things I can do anything about. So it inspires me to continue to train. I train in in Shinkendo 3 days a week with Sensei Matthew Lynch, and get down to Hombu Dojo with Kaiso Obata, as often as I can. And then I teach 2 or 3 other days a week. So these are in addition to, the occasional job and the auditions, both on camera and voice work, et cetera, et cetera. So I stay busy, and it keeps me young. But to get back to your idea of everything I do is based on a martial truth. I teach. I have evolved over the course of about 55 years. They're a skeletal alignment structure. In that, the simplicity of it is. Here, I have something handy as it happens. The weapon is in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
So my hand is behind the weapon. My elbow is behind my hand. My body is behind my elbow. If my body is behind my elbow, you have to deal with my entire body. If I'm just kind of waving this around and my elbow's sticking out at the side, you only have to deal with how strong is my hand and my shoulder. But when everything lines up with itself, when everything does the same thing at the same time, no one part has to do more than its share, and you're much more effective both martially, but also, from a storytelling point of view, because your entire body is saying the same thing. But this is how, like when I'm working my whip, my finesse is in my fingers. My power comes from my body, but I never sacrifice the finesse for power. I just use more body. The same thing happens. It's with any. For example, if you throw a simple punch, you can only punch this far unless you activate the hip. And now you have both more reach and more power. That's skeletal alignment. And it's as important offensively as it is defensively. Defensively, I build a wall and get behind it, which means I get behind my elbow. Now you're having to do with my feet, my core, my legs, my torso, my arm, and the weapon. So that's how I mean. And what happens is this skeletal alignment is always there. For example, again, my job in working in film and theater, I staged action for LA Opera for 20 years. I staged action in theaters all over, Southern California and much of the United States for years. And that just took me down memory lane. The whole idea to that is with this skeletal alignment structure, the only thing that changes is the nature of the tool. Now, every weapon is a tool, okay? And is it a rigid weapon? Is it a flexible weapon? Is it straight? Is it curved? Is it for cutting? Is it for thrusting? Is it a combination of the two? If someone is utilizing a weapon, it's either a weapon of opportunity, okay, or it's something that they have chosen or that's been chosen for them because it's an extension of their personality, which is yet another storytelling tool. Yeah. But also the weapon tells you your weapon is an ally. The weapon is an extension of you. Most people treat it like it's an adversary. They try to make it work. Okay, you don't want an adversary. When I'm on a horse, I want an 1,100-pound ally. When I'm working my whip, the tip of the whip goes 768 miles per hour. A 45 caliber bullet goes a little over 900 feet per second. The whip will do 1,400 feet per second. It'll cut you like a knife because of the velocity. So I need to be very sensitive to this, which brings us back to being an expert at not hitting things. Very early on, I realized I not only had to protect myself, I also had to protect my partner. And because I study all the time about the only person that I have ever had the great fortune to have as a partner whose skills exceeded mine, I think would be Jet Li. Everybody else, I would be pulling them up to my level, because rather than dumbing down, I would rather pull it, and I would win their trust, so that they knew I was there to help them look great. And I would also convince them that, don't worry, you're not going to hit me. So you can commit to your performance. You can commit to, your attacks, so they look real. And by controlling distance and controlling timing and being sensitive to the energy. But early on, I witnessed a couple of, accidents. And it was because when people forget, they will sometimes just stick their face into the path of a punch. And you have to be sensitive enough to be able to go, oh, he's not, he's gone, and okay, I'm supposed to throw this punch now, but if his face is in the way, I've got to find something else to do. When I worked with Tom Cruise on Far and Away, I saw he was very consistent. He was also wonderful to work with. He was very supportive of his team, and I'm sure he still is. He realized he had all these people to help him look great. But when we were working, I would throw a hook. Nothing looks worse than throwing a hook and going here and then going up and over the head and then doing this. It has to be level. It doesn't have to be low. But most people, they throw the sword or they throw the punch. And what I do is I throw the body. And I don't release the weapon, be it my hand or a stick or a sword or whatever it happens to be, until I'm sure. So actually the weapon is always last. There's two advantages to that. One is you can protect your partner. The other is you give the audience time to see the jeopardy. So you see, because if a fight isn't logical, and I got all of this from all my theater work, because I had to be able to stage something that would be effective 8 shows a week and go on for 3 months. And there's an art and a craft in that, believe me. But if you can't follow the story, it's not very interesting. It's not emotionally evocative. Okay.
Right,
So very simple piece of action, a simple slap. There's the moment before, there's the action. That's the motivator. There's the reaction. That's the response. And then there's the moment after. That is 4 opportunities to say something specific about your character. Most people blow through them. And most is punch and react. So that's where the acting comes in. But back to an expert at not hitting people, through the course of my, studies and, my opportunities as a performer, I did all of this so that I would be a more effective performer. But along with it came the opportunity to be a more effective action director, to be, a fight coordinator, the things to tell a story with action. And, I started to go, how do I impart? Because one lifetime isn't enough to learn everything about any art. But the more arts you study, the more I started to see, there are fundamentals and concepts that connect these arts. Bruce Lee called them the ribbons of truth. And so, for example, in any bladed weapon system in the world, there's 8 angles of attack. There's forehand diagonal, backhand diagonal, forehand horizontal, backhand horizontal, rising diagonal, descending vertical, and ascending vertical. That makes an asterisk. Okay. It is in every weapon system of the world. Actually, whether I have a weapon or if my body is this, not all arts use all 8, but those elements are there. Similarly, footwork, there's 8 angles. There's forward and back. That's linear. That's what most people think of as Western fencing. That's a very limited view, but that is part of it. or they're as lateral, where something comes, I move out of the way. Kaiso Obata says, sword come, you move. Okay. Trains on the track, step off the track. And then there's build a wall and get behind it. That's descending diagonal in Filipino martial arts. That's the male triangle. And then there's ascending diagonal, where you come, I let you have center line and I shift offline. And then I create a new center line where my leverage is better. 8 angles and circle. That's all there is in every weapon system. So utilizing those elements, you control the weapon, you control the distance, you control the timing, and you are sensitive to the energy of your partner at that moment in time, which means I will never hit you by accident, which means I can hit you anytime I want to. So they are parallel disciplines. Each one, I have found, has made its mirror image better. That's how I approach it.
Anthony, I can tell you're just a natural teacher, just the way you're speaking about, look, you got such an impressive resume, including teaching, right? It's so extensive. It's so impressive. It covers so many areas. Do you have a favorite?
I like to be creative. I've always been an actor first, which is why I think my choreography is more interesting, more specific, certainly. I enjoy performing. I really enjoy performing with a partner because you've probably heard the expression many times, acting is listening, which it is. I'm not just waiting for you to stop talking so that I can say my line. That's not a very good performance. Right. But that's how when you have a partner, you don't have to do all the work, because what you say and how you say it, or what you do and how you do it, will affect my response if I'm paying attention. I've come in, I've done my work, I know my lines, I know, I have a plan more or less, but I'm also willing to not be so rigid in my plan that I ignore what you are offering me. This is actually a very good interview. These are things that I don't usually get into. So your performance enriches mine and vice versa. Very early on in my career, I was fortunate to work with some really fine actors. Some actors are kind of selfish.
I've heard.
It is a tough business, because you have to protect yourself, because what you're selling is you. And you have very little control. You have control over the quality of your own work. That's what I have come to accept, and that's what I tell other people. Whether or not you get the job very often has very little to do with your ability. You might be the best person for the job, doesn't mean you're going to get it. And so all you can control is, okay, this is the quality of my work. I can control my time in the room. Back when we used to go into the room and actually audition for the director, sometimes that still happens. And then you have to, if I've done my best now, I have to, let that go and walk away and move on to the next thing. And what have I learned from that? But that took me down memory lane too. What were we just talking about?
Well, I think acting is your favorite out of everything.
It is. So, but all of these other tools were to give me more choices as an actor, and they have been very, very helpful, because the things I learned in martial arts, those 8 angles of attack that I told you about, I could teach you that in 5 different languages. The point is, it doesn't matter what you call it if you understand its construction and what it's for. So then when I am the other part of this, if I'm not in front of the camera, which I really enjoy, I still think my best work is yet to come if I can make those opportunities happen. But I also enjoy helping other people make the most out of their character action opportunities, which is acting action, that they're to make them aware of. The choice you make here, is a foundation you're going to build on for the rest of the piece. And this, of course, as I'm helping other people perceive that, I'm also reminding myself of it. But yeah, so I definitely enjoy it. But acting is very much a martial art. I hadn't really thought about it this way before, but it is my response to you and your energy at that moment in time. Not the take we just did, not the take we maybe are going to do, but what is happening right now. And that's exactly what happens if you're in a fight. One of the wonderful things about doing choreographed action is you stage a fight to tell a story, which means there's a certain amount of control, but there's also always a certain amount of danger and hazard. One of my favorite professional collaborations was with Jet Li and Yen Wu Ping.
Are you talking Fearless?
I'm talking about Fearless.
By the way, real quick, for anyone, I know a lot of people are coming from Masters of the Universe. You guys got to check out Fearless. It's a great movie, and Anthony's scene is awesome in it.
Thanks.
And I love how you, at the end of the little fight, and I know I'm going to let you continue, is you didn't get upset, but you kind of accepted, you kind of honored him after you lost to him. It wasn't like the guy before it, who got all pissed off and.
He got very frustrated. Well, and that's part of what was fun. They actually searched all over the world. There wasn't supposed to be like 12 fighters, but they had a long movie, and by the time we got to the end, there was 4 of these European fighters who were there to make him look bad. A small amount of racism, but there we are. But that was the whole thing at the time, that the Chinese were the sick men of Asia. Was well, anyway, there's some historical aspects of that. But one of the things, the reason I play a lot of bad guys, but they're not bad guys. They're essentially antagonists. And I always feel it's not really a burden. It's a bar that I have to be a worthy opponent, because if I'm not, then you don't have much of a hero. I mean, even though it's a weekly series, and I guess start on Highlander twice, and it's like we know the Highlanders are going to win, and of course that's one of the big challenges for both the writer and Adrian Paul in the TV series. How do we keep this fresh, knowing that I'm going to win, or else there's no more series? But I came in, and my second time, I had to come up with an idea. The writer said, "Oh, you were so distinctive," and it was called Blackmail Season 3. And I said, "I'm an actor. I could be different." I said, "Well, if you can come up with a story that we haven't done yet, a backstory." So I came in and I pitched them. By then, they were going into their 5th season, which means almost 100 hours. Because back in the day, you used to get 22 episodes in a series.
I remember.
And you go 5 years to get syndication, and that's when things, that's the glory. But anyway, so I pitched, we did that in season 2. We kind of did that in season 4. And then I came up with the idea of the debt that could never be repaid. And that was what they wrote. It was originally called The Mysterious Circle, and then it became Duende. And I got to, in addition to playing a great role, I had pitched Robert Rodriguez to do Zorro with Antonio Banderas. Oh, wow. And 3 days later, contract disputes, he left the project. Martin Campbell came in. Martin brought in Bob Anderson of Star Wars fame. And it was like, oh, crap, that didn't work. I was disappointed, but I got a call 2 weeks later saying, "You want to go to Paris and the guest star in the series that basically we wrote the part for him." So I said, "Yes, I do." And that was, many people think it's the best fight in the 7 years of the show. I tend to agree. But the amazing thing was, we had no rehearsal for it. Basically, we I got there, and our first fight was in the garden, and it was rapier and dagger. And the story is, I'm his fencing master, and then I feel like he's betrayed me because he's romancing the woman that I'm about to marry. And we just threw it together. We kind of shown it to him, and we thought we'd rehearse on set. And the only reason we got any rehearsal at all was because the camera truck broke down. So we had half an hour, and that was our first one. The next one we improvised on set, which was the school. And the last one, we had put it together the night before, and Adrian says, "I haven't seen the fight yet." We showed him the fight, figuring, all right, we'll go over this the next day. And then I went on and shot another scene that I had for the day. And then we got on the set the next day, and it's pissing down rain, and they have no cover set. There is nowhere that's not in the rain. And we'd asked them to treat the surface because we were fencing on Thibaut's mysterious circle, which is all about angles and leverage, which is martial arts. And they said, we asked you to treat the surface. Said, well, it rained. I said, yeah, that's why we asked you to treat the surface. So it was like being on an ice rink. It was a lot like Christopher Lee's fight in The Three Musketeers, you know. But that was a ton of fun. But basically, we started to film, and the light was so awful. We've chosen the location because the Eiffel Tower was in the background. You couldn't see it because visibility was about 100 feet. You know, so it's there, but we couldn't see it. So we just said, okay, let's stop. We'll wait until it gets dark. Then we will pump light through it, and it'll look fabulous. And it did. But you know, God is a great art director, but it was miserable to work in. But that was stuff. But again, we basically neither one of us knew the choreography. We simply responded to each other. And where that really happened was on Fearless. They had searched all over the world. Mike Leader, who was casting director and associate producer on the project, came up to my ranch, saw my skills with sword and whip. They flew me to Shanghai to partner jet. I was there a week early. I was looking forward to working with the team because different people work different ways, and they've all been together for 25 years or more at that time. And they were running behind by about 5 days. So I didn't get to meet them until I walked on set, shook hands, and immediately the team started throwing ideas out. And as soon as Jet and Wu Ping were happy, Jet and I got up and walked it once or twice, and then we shot it at speed. Never more than 2 takes. And then we would do it all over again. So neither one of us knew the choreography. There was literally no rehearsal, but his 35 plus years and my 35 years at that time plus years. And basically he moved, I'd react. I moved, he'd react. So we were responding at that moment in time to the energy of our partner. So not only did it not look over rehearsed, because it sure as hell wasn't, but it looked very organic and spontaneous. But that's only possible when you train. Otherwise, they would have shot me 3 moves at a time, which is what they were doing with another actor, which is why they were 5 days behind. I caught them up 3 of their 5 days in 2 half days of filming. So they kind of liked me. But it was extremely exciting because I had to rise to the occasion and and be able to match and hang with Jet Li. And I had to commit to where he was going to be, not where he was. And I would always, how shall I put this here? I would take and I would fully extend. Yes, it's a knife. I would fully extend where I was going because this is what makes it look like an attack. But I wouldn't release my fingers until I knew he was there. So that's where being an expert at not hitting people comes into play. And yet we were always just this far away from, either one of us. We took very good care of each other. I was very pleased. There was a lot of mutual respect. And,
wasn't that the same situation on Masters of the Universe with you and Dolph?
Yes.
When you guys were fighting, that there wasn't any rehearsed choreography? You didn't have the time?
Well, being movies, I came in and I won the part of Blake, which I didn't know at the time. There was that character didn't exist in the Eternian universe. I got to create this character based on what I saw in the script and how I responded to what was going on around me. The coordinator, Walter Scott, who I've sent work for several times, a Magnificent 7 TV series, also, so I'm very proud of, which is called Secondhand Lions, with Michael Caine and Haley Joe Osment, and I did all the flashback sword stuff because it's Michael Caine telling him stories and Haley Joe, imagining, and the coordinator Caine said they want it to look like Robin Hood and the Mark of Zorro, and that's just I can do that. So it You keep taking me down memory lane. which
well,
me,
it seems like you and Dolph like kind of creating stuff on the spot, right?
Here's what happened with Dolph. So the coordinator, a fellow named Lauren James, who's a very famous stuntman, president of the Stuntmen's Association. He was Steve McQueen's stunt double for many years. He was going to teach him the sword stuff, and he saw it was me, and he said, "You know more about this than I do. You train." So I did. So I had about a month to train Dolph, who's a tremendous athlete. He's a champion kickboxer and etc. But I very quickly convinced him, I'm here to help you look great. Here, let me show you. The props they were using, I have the power. I called it Buick Slayer because it was giant and not terribly well balanced. But I got him, I showed him, look, gravity can become an ally if you let it, and his athleticism made him, work that, or allowed him to work the sword with great dexterity. He did terrific. But so we trained for a month, and then I didn't see him for a month. I mean, I didn't see him at all. And I kept going to the coordinator and saying, when can I see the location so I can come up with ideas for you? Because I always like to make the location part of the story, because it is.
Sure. Yeah.
You either ignore it or you utilize it. It's always better to utilize it. Yeah. And he kept going, quit bugging me. We're going to have all kinds of time once we get down there. First thing we shot in 6 weeks of nights in Whittier, California, was the fight scene. I had about an hour with them. And I said, remember that thing that I taught you in training about here like this and that double sword stuff? Okay, we'll put this. So basically we had an hour. And then we threw the thing together, and I had to kill some boxes because they decided that was a good idea. And then I had to catch Sorod, because He-Man grabs him and throws him. And I'm going, oh, great, I'm his stunt bag. The chainmail I wore at the time, nobody was making chainmail.
That looked heavy.
It was 10 6-foot lengths of pipe cut into pieces. So I'm wearing about 50 feet of pipe. And they put that on me, and then they put the shoulder pads on with the big spikes. As soon as I saw that, I kind of went, well, I'm not going to be doing any shoulder rolls in this, am I? Back when shoulder rolls was a viable option. But so that's what happened there. And then as it happened at the end, we had no idea the hoops that, Gary Goddard, our director, was having to jump through.
Yeah.
And the stuff that was going on behind, and the fact that they didn't have any money, and the fact that the crew hadn't been paid. And, our line producer and Gary managed to say, well, we're all here. Let's do the work. And he'll have money for you by the end of the day. And he did. I didn't find this out until years later when Gary and I were at a convention, PowerCon, I believe it was. And he was telling me this. I'm like, well, you kept it from us, and that's great. But, and then, we get to the end. They're like, Canon's going out of business, and they want to wrap this thing up. And there's a bunch of stuff along the way, but I'll just quickly get to this story. And so, okay. And they said, well, the coordinator said, yeah, I'm going to have you double Frank, and I didn't find out again until years later that Frank really wanted to do more stuff, but I never saw him throughout the course of the picture.
Not once. Huh.
No, I saw him when I was in scenes with him, but I never heard that he wanted, to do any training or do, have a big, fight sequence that we could plan and choreograph and stuff. So basically said, you're going to double him. And I went, okay, just one question. Is this before he becomes God Skeletor? In other words, is he in his usual wardrobe? They said, yeah. So I choreographed a thing with the power staff that was pretty cool, but involved a certain amount of manipulation of it, to maximize, because you have a sword, a big two-headed sword, versus a staff. And these two, it's a great pairing because they each have their strengths and they each have their weaknesses. And I put together some choreography that everybody liked. And then we get there the next day and they said, oh no, this is after. And they have me in essentially elk horns and the New York skyline.
It looked like a New York skyline. It did.
I mean, all of the things that I choreographed, we couldn't do. So I had about half an hour to go. All right, well, we'll do this instead.
Could you see in that thing? Could you see in that thing?
Which brought us to the mask. If you were to take and put your hands right on, put your hand under your eyes and over your eyes. I'm essentially peeking through slits. Okay. I
that
cannot
sounds
see
so
my
dangerous.
feet, and I'm in Frank's boots, which were too small, which have leather soles, and then the smoke that they're using has an oil base, so it's slippery as hell. And I have no peripheral vision at all. But again, Dolph and I took care of each other. But it's a lot more simplified than I would have liked.
Yeah.
And then I guess, Shannon, just said, nope, that's it. We're done. Wrap it up. And Gary managed to talk, get us one more half a day. And he brought in a color wheel. Like a color wheel that goes around like this, like you might get if you were at a skating rink, and a light. And he did that, and he got a bunch of smoke and blah, blah. And we threw together that final sequence on the spot, including the slide the sword and get to the sword before it goes over the thing. And then, I go back on wires and fall and have the I'll be back at the end. And I was always really hoping that there was going to be a follow-up, and now apparently there is, but they haven't.
Wait, you did the I'll be back scene coming out of the?
I was the one who did the fall on the wires. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Okay. Out of the hoop, but yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, and I think you guys broke, at least for the time, you guys broke the record for like consecutive nights shooting. Like up to that point, Masters of the Universe held the Guinness Book of World Record.
Well, one of my funny stories was I had the opportunity because you're going to have a shaved head. I said you need to shave your head, or you can have a bald cap, which probably isn't going to work very well. Even though V. Neal was our makeup lady, she's won many, many awards. We worked together on Batman Returns again too. I just saw her in the 30-year screening a year or so ago. But very, very talented lady. But just said, bald caps really, they don't work, and blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, fine, shave my head. So I was 20 minutes in makeup, whereas, Beast Man and Karg, and they were hours. When I did, I guess, start on Star Trek Voyager, I was Maj Kala. I was 3.5 hours in makeup and an hour out every time. And I guess start on, 4 times, I think. But any two way, we did 6 weeks of nights in Whittier on Masters of the Universe, and which meant I hit rush hour traffic both coming and going for 6 weeks. So they had bought me an electric razor, and I would sit in traffic and shave my head and look at people like this, like I hated the world. And that was before Michael Jordan and anybody had made that look. My friend.
You made it cool.
It was fun.
And you gotta say you at least got to make something up, because people have been waiting for how many years has it been? 37 years, wondering the truth behind what happened to Blade's eye. Wondering, was it the goody He-Man that wounded you a long time ago, and then that's why you said,
I've waited a long time for this.
You've been waiting for revenge, basically. Did they ever give you any sort of character insight? No.
Actually, it was really it was both gratifying and kind of I really appreciated Gary's trust, because he gave me almost no direction. And when a director doesn't, a director will tell you when he wants something different. But a director is too busy for a lot of attaboys, so I learned very, very long ago, get very friendly with the first camera and go like, where am I in shot? How close are you? Do you know the 5 T's of cinematography?
I do not.
Very few people do anymore. It's top hat, teeth, tits, testicles, and toes, which they now go with cowboy and full figure and this and that. It's not politically correct now, but still funny and very, very specific. But
Yeah.
you find out where you are, because then how much of my body can I use, or how small do I have to keep this? Because they're not close up. You can talk to 3 people simply by moving your eyes.
Mm.
But if they're this tight and you're shifting your weight and going in and out of frame, you're going to end up on the cutting room floor. So this is understanding your craft and making the medium work
Wow.
for you. So
Wow, this is the stuff you never know about, you never learn about, like someone like me. Wow.
no, well, it's the stuff a lot of actors never learn about. But
Mm.
anyway, just I was saying, it was very it was a great compliment that Gary paid me, and that he very seldom. I knew he was watching, and I knew that if he didn't like what I was doing or wanted me to do something else, he would tell me. But
Yeah.
otherwise, he was giving me the freedom to do what felt right for me as the character that I was creating, because this was a new character, to respond like when he zaps Card and all of that, we come in after our failure and all the things we do. Oh golly, our young man, Robert Duncan McNeil.
Mm. Mm.
We then worked together on Voyager. He was Lieutenant Commander.
Yeah.
And I believe he's his show, the Resident Alien. He's the producer on that. He's doing very well with it.
The actress who played Sorceress, I think Christina Pickles, she played Courtney Cox's mom in Friends. And I was like, what a small world.
Kind of, but they'd asked me. Gary said, because you remember she puts the collar of when Evelyn, Meg Foster.
Yeah.
What a wonderful actress.
Wow. Fantastic.
And she plays that part so very well.
Mm-hmm.
We've met a couple of times since then, and I think the world of her. Anyway, Gary says, I want you to scare him a little bit. And I went, okay. Normally, I would not do something to another actor without letting them know that I was going to. But I also knew what our distance was, what the situation was. And one of the knives I was carrying was a Gerber knife.
I know what you're talking about.
So when, she puts I didn't tell him that I was going to put this, like this far from his head and stick the knife into the thing. So his reaction was very organic. I in no way endangered him, because I knew I could keep him safe. So it wasn't a cheap shot or, irresponsible. Which is part of one of the reasons that I've trained myself to know what are the limitations of something. How do we maximize the opportunity? I did a show called Justified, and the director wanted somebody who could come in and throw a knife into a dartboard next to an actor's head. And I said, and the coordinator goes, "Oh, I know the guy," and he had me come in, and I said, "Okay, you're going to walk through this door. The target is here. Don't pass the frame of the door. I'm not going to miss, but the knife can't come out of the target and come around and go through the door and get you." So basically, as he came, I threw, and just as he reached the edge of the door, ka-thunk, there's this knife right there. But it was a matter of, I could look at it and go, I can keep you safe, and we can do this and get the shot. And then they didn't frame it very well. But we did our job. What you were starting to say.
Well, I was just saying where the camera perspective was when you flip that knife around and then put it in the table or whatever it was like, whoa, it looks so close and so quick. And at the time there was no CGI. So even to this day, that scares me a little when I see that scene.
And this is one of I love practical action.
Yeah.
Because that's where credibility comes from. And I try to tell directors and coordinators, and if I'm doing something, it's that much easier. But, if we're setting something up, it's like, let me see you really throw that knife once. Then you can do all the camera tricks you want.
Yeah.
Or like with Michelle, I had 6 weeks to train her, and then she wanted to keep training until the end of the film. She had such a foundation of skills. None of the other professional stunt women got anywhere near.
So you're talking Michelle Pfeiffer on Batman Returns.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I trained Michelle as Catwoman. And she saw I was trying to give her another layer of performance. And so she worked really hard, and she's another one of my favorite professional collaborations. But she had such a foundation. We would walk onto the set and look at adversity and make it opportunity, and go, okay, here, because of this, we're going to do this, and we'll stay in the vertical quadrant. Now over here, to get away from that furniture, we're going to lift up. We're going to go into a diagonal, and we would rehearse it once or twice. We'd shoot it, and we'd be done, because she was that good. The whole Ice Princess sequence we created on the spot. You know, I came in because by then Michelle said, if I'm working, he's working. I want him on set, because it helped, because I could ask the lighting guys, could you move that light 6 inches? Give me an 18-inch path, and Michelle can focus on her performance and not have to worry about stuff. And it worked great. But in the Ice Princess sequence, you know, Batman discovers she's tied to a chair. You know, Catwoman comes in, cuts her loose, throws the chair, grabs the girl. They says girl talk, and they leave. I come in that day, and Tim Burton said, we were on a first name basis by then. He said, I don't think there's any whip stuff here, Anthony. I said, yes, sir. And I watched the rehearsal, and after the rehearsal, I went over to Michelle, because you know, we had that kind of professional relationship where I could make suggestions or make her aware of, you know, there's an opportunity here. What do you think? Right. And she goes, Tim, Anthony has this idea. So she swung in on her whip, cut the girl loose, dumped the chair. Oh, I said to her, you know, a whip in one hand and a chair in the other says lion tamer the world over. You know, and that was what she called him over. So she swung in, cut the girl loose, dumped her out of the chair, cracked the whip through the chair, grabbed the girl, pulled her into a 2-shot, said girl talk. We rehearsed it once and shot it, and we were done. Wow. And that's what you can do if you train an actor. And that's why I'm always trying to get people to train the actor, because then you get a credibility that's priceless, you know, and it's worth the investment of time and the little bit of money. You know, I tell people, look, I will save you more money than you'll ever pay me. And there's something wrong with that equation, but there you go.
You know, with your whip skills, it almost feels like in like what you did with Michelle Pfeiffer, and then what you did with Harrison Ford later on the fourth indie film. It feels like a missed opportunity that they used a laser whip in the Masters of the Universe movie. I mean, here's this guy with talented whip skills. And
one nice thing about that was they told me that, which is also what the coordinator wanted to do with Harrison Ford, was, now you don't have to teach him very much. His name's Gary Powell. You're just going to put a handle in his hand and then CGI. And I'm going, this is his iconic character action prop. Don't do that. As it happened, I got to prep Harrison, and then I didn't get to go on the movie. So I didn't get to offer ideas that I did with Michelle. So I was a little disappointed in that.
Yeah.
But what I said to the guys, because the animators said, you know, we're gonna animate, you know, and this is, you know, they gave me a stick about 12 inches long. I said, well, okay, but I happen to know a little something about whip. Will you film me so I can show you how a whip actually works? And that should, you know, help you make a better animation. So they did, and we did, and I think it. So then also, because a lot of people just yank the whip around, I use my whole body. So it blended, and I think the sequence works pretty well.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I could do it for real now.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I set my whip on fire and do it for real. I have people. My website is www.delongis.com. DELONGIS.com. And there's stuff on there for, you know, there's my Swordmaster reel, there's my Whipmaster reel.
Yeah.
Horse skills, there's private training at Rancho and Dalo. There's all of the instructional DVDs that I made over the years. They're all digitized now, and you can download them on this site called Buy Me a Coffee. But yeah, and then there's also some stuff with Fire Whip where, you know, most people, again, yank the whip, make a big kabloosh with the fire, and I'm going, I can keep this fire lit for almost 2 minutes and just wrap it around my body and roll it out. And it's the aesthetic and the precision of what I'm doing. Because to me, a whip is a supersonic flexible blade. And those same 8 angles that I described for sword are true with the whip. Most people yank and slash. I roll and stab. So it's, I mean, I was able to create this because of my work with Maestro Ralph Faulkner with sword, and then my work with, Guridan and Asanto with footwork and multiple angles, and that perception. I saw things that other people didn't see. So my system is more efficient, it's more effective, it's more effortless, it's more accurate. I have built safety into the structure that's invisible to everybody, but it makes it much safer for me to work with a partner, which I do a lot of. And I can actually take, on my reel, you'll see me cut the wick out from underneath a candle flame, and the flame's still there. And then a buddy of mine, we pass each other at full gallop, and I cut a target out of his hand, with the whip, with the trust of my horses. So that the safety of your partner has always got to be more important than your own ego.
Sure.
So I have to train to that level, and that's what I do.
Do you have a favorite? I mean, if you had to pick one, do you have a favorite weapon? Out of everything.
Why do I have to pick one?
You have to pick one.
The other thing is, another one of my inspirations is, of course, Jackie Chan. Jackie has extraordinary ability, but it's always character driven, and it always, reveals things about him and drives the story. But one of his greatest creatives is he will make weapons of opportunity out of whatever happens to be available. And kind of going, how's he going to make a weapon out of a stepladder? How's he going to make a weapon out of, and it's, I mean, literally decades of training and execution, but also he and his team, they're enormously creative. So all of this training that I've been doing, I can take those skills and what's the nature of something that I have at hand? A piece of rebar or an axe handle or a fireplace poker or, a toilet plunger or a washcloth or, or an extension cord, you can make, again, knowledge gives you choices, and that's what creates character opportunities.
So it'd be a weapon of opportunity then would be your favorite.
Well, yeah, but I am still, swords and whips are,
I gotta ask you, do you feel kind of, back to Blade, do you kind of feel like ownership of the character? Meaning, because now the character is starting to get, it got new life in 2021. There was a Netflix animated series that Kevin Smith produced, and a lot of stars voiced it, like Lena Headey, Mark Hamill, the works.
I did a very good reading for Skeletor.
You did? Wow.
And I was really kind of hoping, and then Mario. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Mark Hamill.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, his Joker is by far the best of the animated series, but I was a little disappointed that I didn't get to do anything.
I had no idea but I mean, why not? Why not at least a small part for Blade? I mean, they featured Blade.
Well, I heard that he popped in. There's also the new movie coming out apparently, and I've been chasing that job for. Fans say, "Oh, no." I said, "Well, please write letters." I'd love to, but I'd love to see Blade come back. And hey, I keep saying, Blade wants a rematch. I helped make the classic figure. John Atkins, the fellow who did that lovely interview a few years ago.
Do you mean this one? Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'll send you a little video. It says, this is Blade. I'm up here on the top of a mountain in Rancho Indalo, and I'm in disguise. And I held up the old one. It says, "Don't let this be my legacy." And so they came out with the classic version. Now they have a new one coming out as well.
Yes, actually, I have a picture here. Hang on, let me pop this up because the question is, do you think it's a good likeness of you? So let's see if I could pull this.
Well, we did work with the sculptors. It's a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I have pictures that they sent me that I said, yeah, the mouth's not right. It's funny. I remember when Michelle was doing Catwoman, and they brought in, figures that they had carved of her. But each one is an improvement. So they just sent me one, and I was going. Well, I'm pleased to be acknowledged and recognized. Let me say that.
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting, and it's really, I was just talking to Tiffany Smith about this, that I'm a huge fan of a movie called Silver Linings Playbook, right? Huge fan, love the movie. It was Bradley Cooper, Jennifer Lawrence, wonderful story, Robert De Niro, and I was talking that that movie is already fading into obscurity, but there's something about genre stuff that seems to give a little bit of immortality to the people who are participating. That it's like Christmas music at Christmas time. The only time you'll hear artists from the 50s, and the 60s, and otherwise you won't hear them again on the radio. And somehow this genre stuff it lives on. If it's King Kong, or Godzilla, or the Universal Monsters, or something, where the whole legacy is just continues to be immortal in a sense. And I think Masters of the Universe.
Have you ever seen Roadhouse?
Yes, I've seen with Patrick Swayze. Yeah.
Right boot. I'm catching.
Was that you?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
You got to do your homework, man.
Well,
that was always playing on Spike TV for several years. So yeah, that was one of my iconic characters.
Anthony, your homework is so extensive. That's why it's so impressive. I mean, like you were in V.
Yes, I was.
I know, and I love that miniseries. What?
Do you know who I fought?
No, I don't.
Robert. I fought Robert, who's I'm trying to think of Freddy Krueger. Robert Englund.
Oh, Robert Englund. Yeah, he played the nice.
Yeah, and we have a very brief scene. I get hit over the back of the head, it seems to me. But yeah, so it was just kind of.
And you played a lot of that genre stuff that, there seemed to be, you were mentioning Highlander, but it seemed like in the late 90s, there was this big television resurgence of genre, or not resurgence, but boom of like, it was after Hercules and Xena that it was like Conan the Adventurer came out, and Highlander.
I went down and did a guest star on that.
Yeah, and Sinbad, and it seemed like
on that.
It seemed great for fantasy.
The original MacGyver. I was Creator the Assassin. That was a lot of fun. That was one of my favorite TV roles. I also
Battlestar Galactica.
Yes, and do you know who was the guest star on that episode? The original Battlestar Galactica, Fred Astaire. So I got to meet one of my heroes. We were on a blood hunt, and I was one of the Boralian Nomen, which is essentially Dune. And we were supposed to come in and take over for the Cylons, but alas, they decided that, the original Battlestar had run its course, and we got to do 2 episodes, and that was all.
I mean, you must be so proud. I mean, just looking at,
I would be if it wasn't so hard to get a freaking job. 52 years in the business, and it's like there's a frustration. I mean, I'm very proud of my body of work. I feel like I've done some very good roles, but I've never had a TV series or a substantial enough role in a major feature to where I'm referred to as a star name, because right before the pandemic, we had about a decade of star names only. Don't even submit if somebody's not a star name. And I'm kind of going, look at my body of work. Judge me by the work that I've done. But so that's the politics of it. That's why that 53 years, says 54 this year. Wow. As a working professional, and diversity has been a key. If I had to do just one thing, everyone else I know who started when I did is either dead, or else they had to give it up because they couldn't make a living at it. They had their period of time in the 80s or the 90s or whatever. I'm still going. I'm still creative, and that's what keeps me going. I would like a little more in front of the camera opportunity, but in the meantime, I'm going to be doing something, whether it's helping somebody else be as effective and creative as possible, or whether teaching helps me a lot because it makes me better, and it makes me a better actor. It makes me a better storyteller. It makes me a better director. So I very much enjoy it. But yeah, I'm always looking to create another opportunity so that I can come in and collaborate, because it's about collaboration. That's what's true. I love the work. It's still the hardest and easiest thing I've ever done. The business is very difficult because it's not fair, and but then so neither is life. But so you've got to somehow find a way to be creative and not get self-destructive. And it's why so many people have problems with substance abuse or depression, or because acting is very personal. You're a salesperson, and the product you're selling is yourself. And
there's a certain exposed.
Everybody wants you to knock on their door, or the business has a tendency to put you into a very small box, and they only want that box when they need that box, and that's if they remember that box. So and that's the frustration you play against. So finding a way to stay creative, to stay passionate, to stay engaged, is critical, if you want to stay in this business and have a happy life. I have a pretty happy life. My wife and I just celebrated 22 years. I posted today. I just came back. We came back from, it was my 75th birthday and our 27th wedding anniversary. We went to Naples and around, and we were up in the mountains there for, like 10 days. And it was magical. And she'd been working on this. She was trying to do it for my 70th, and then we had a pandemic. Which took about a year, and it was tremendous. And we got back, and then, the next week, 6 days later, I went off to Arkansas to do the James Black Bowie Heritage Festival to come in and do some whip stuff and some knife throwing, and and engage with people and support this. And Doug Marcaida, who's a wonderful Filipino martial artist, and we are set to do a project called The Giant coming up with our producer and director Kevin Ploth. That should be coming out later this year. But I got to do a little. We hadn't met, and I'd seen him on Forge and Fire for 10 years, of course, and then he's very active on social media, with his Filipino martial arts, and much of it I recognize and really appreciate his skills. But we just did an improvisation. We just got up and started engaging energy back and forth, and he also referred to it as a dance, but that's, here we are taking care of each other with weapons, and we've just met. So there's no small amount of trust in that, but also a mutual respect, which is why things work so well with, Jet Li, and with, Yan Wu Ping, and with, Dolph Lundgren, Adrian Paul. So anyway, that's what those kind of things make it. But just to finish, and it's probably a good place to wrap up. We got back, and our washing machine crapped out on the weekend. And Mary and I said, "Well, is that out of warranty?" He said, "It was a wedding present," which means it's 22 years old. And I proceeded to go off the list of all of the things that, well, and I had to laugh, and I said, our relationship has outlived a dozen major appliances. I mean, we've gone through,
that's the true test of time.
This and that, and I just sort of said, we have a lifetime warranty here. So that's kind of what I posted today.
That's amazing, and congratulations. And you know what, you are just beloved to us, to like Masters of the Universe fans. You're an A-lister to us, and we nothing that would make fans happier than you and Dolph coming back to Master, because Dolph, it might be making a cameo appearance already in the movie. He was in London, and he was on social media saying he was doing a secret project, and they're right now filming in London. And he also said he was being fitted for a wig for a secret project. And we assume he might be a father or, King Grayskull or some other character. So and fans would go nuts if you came back as Blade. Actually, you're confirming that Blade didn't die. That was a big fan question.
He never died.
Well, I know. They assumed he fell off in the abyss.
Well, yeah, but never assume. If anybody can cling to an edge, if Indiana Jones can cling to an edge, so can Blade. But
very true, sir.
Yeah, I was really hoping that they might have reached out, because they kept saying, "Well, would you like to come back as Blade?" Well, of course. Would you like to play a different role? Yes, I would. So of course I wish them well, and wish I could be a part of it. But who knows? Maybe maybe there'll be some more voice opportunities. Or I like to collaborate. I like to be creative, and I have to say that I was very surprised. I've been lucky enough to work in 13 countries on 5 continents, and many people, have come up to me and said, "Oh, I grew up with, Masters of the Universe, and, now my son, or, when we were in Australia, there was a little kid who his brother had gone off, to the armed forces and stuff in Australia. But so now he had the toys, and he came, with, to our door. We were staying at a ranch, and I was riding some horses in Australia. And he was just, he was just beaming and brimming, and just, so pleased and proud, and because Eternia is real, and how big a place it's played in so many people's lives, I didn't realize. So I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to create a character that didn't exist in the universe until I came along. So that's again one of my favorite career collaborations is Masters of the Universe, and I really appreciate the fans. And keep writing those letters, and anything I can do to help the world get deeper and richer, and and more successful. It'd be a privilege.
Well said. All right, sir. I think we ran the gamut. Do you have anything else you want to touch upon or add, or perhaps that we didn't address?
Oh, Red Dead Redemption. I'm going to be appearing in October, end of October, the beginning of November. We'll be in Tombstone. It's called Tombstone Redemption, and that's to celebrate the character I created. I was Marshall Lee Johnson in Red Dead Redemption. That was a ton of fun. And also, have the fans check out? It's called Bulletstorm, and it's I play General Serrano, who's a very bad guy. Basically, convinces his away team to go do terrible things, thinking that they're doing for good, and really for me. But it's also the most profane character that I've ever played. I mean. There is, you can either go to Bulletstorm or General Serrano, and there's about 30 minutes of me just turning the air blue with, profanity. When we were doing it, I'm looking at them going, "You sure you want me to say this? Because I'm going to commit." So that's a fun. But yeah, please have people go to thelongis.com because they can see things I've done, things I'm doing now. People who might be interested in coming to, either learn for the business, or they want to have an action vacation. You can teach you to be Zorro, or He-Man, or we have. I have an on-site gun range. I have an archery range. I have a knife and tomahawk range. I'm in the Knife Throwers Hall of Fame, which is kind of cool. I'm in the Black Belt Hall of Fame, and the Ultimate Warriors Hall of Fame, and the USA Martial Arts Hall of Fame. It's the knowledge that's important, but of course, it's always nice to have, a little acknowledgement and a little encouragement to keep going. But all of that stuff's on the website. So, and then of course, all of the instructionals that I've been making since 1999, they're up there too and available.
Okay. So everyone check that out. And we want to thank Anthony for being on today. Thank you, sir. It has been such a extreme honor and pleasure to have you on. And, you can tell that you poured your heart and soul, not just into Masters of the Universe and Blade, but everything you do. And
it's the best way to live life.
Indeed.
All right, well, everybody, stay healthy, stay creative, and I hope we get a chance to see each other in person very soon.